Hi everybody. So today I am going from Taitung, which is in the east of Taiwan, to the city of Kaohsiung, which is in the west of Taiwan. And there is a typhoon heading this way, which sucks because I don't know if it's going to affect my train schedule. I hear that they shut down the trains when there's a strong enough typhoon. So hopefully the typhoon is still far enough out that it won't affect me getting to the city that I need to go to. It looks like the center of the typhoon is going to hit exactly where I'm going to be, and I'm only going to be a couple miles out from the ocean, so that fucking sucks. But at the very least, it shouldn't be too bad there compared to the east side of the islands because of the rotation of the typhoon and the fact that the mountains kind of, make the winds die down a little bit by the time it'll get to where I'm going. I'm almost at the train station. I'm really crossing my fingers that the storm isn't bad enough yet, that the train's been canceled. If it is, I'm kind of fucked. Good news, the train seemed not to be canceled. And interesting news, my train leaves at 10:17, and I am sitting in car number 10, seat number 17. Quick update on how things are going. I just took the train over to the southwest side of the island where the typhoon hasn't hit yet at all. It's supposed to start raining pretty soon, but not too bad. So for now I'm exploring a town called Pingtung, which is where I'll be for a couple hours before going on to Kaohsiung, which is where I'll stay for a few nights. And while I was in the train, I saw that the typhoon had been updated to the equivalent of a Category 4. For reference, I think Katrina was like a Category 3, and I will be a couple miles inland from the coast. So I'm hoping that I don't die. The weather really isn't supposed to be too bad today, but it will be tomorrow when the eye of the storm hits pretty much exactly where I'm going to be. That's what it's looking like. And from what I've read, it's actually quite rare for the typhoons to hit the west side of Taiwan. Usually they hit the east side because, that's where most of the ocean is, and also because there's a very large mountain range that protects the west side from the east side. When I was in China last year, I saw a lot of this bear around. And apparently this bear, that's I think the bad guy from Toy Story 3, is really popular here as well. I've heard people argue that Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3 are basically the same movie. But the bad guy in Toy Story 2 looks like a bad guy. Like you see him and you're like, oh, that's the bad guy. But the bad guy in Toy Story 3 is just a cute teddy bear, and you don't expect him to be the bad guy. This poor little guy doesn't even know that there's a typhoon on the way. Or maybe he does. I don't know how smart squirrels are. This might end up being the last time I ever eat before getting killed by a typhoon. And if that's the case, my last meal is going to be Subway. I talked with some more people, and they seem to not give a shit that there's about to be a typhoon. So I guess that's a good sign. I like checking out random small towns like this, because even though they're kind of mid, they got cool shit like this, and people are like, what are you doing here? We don't get foreigners here. And that's kind of a good feeling. I've made it to the city of Kaohsiung. I think I'm finally saying that right. And it is raining, but as you can see, that's not going to stop me from walking. When I was on the east side of the island this morning, I was getting all sorts of text messages from Taiwan's weather service, basically just warning me about the falling debris related to the typhoon. But ever since I got to the west side of the island, I haven't gotten any alerts. They'll probably happen tomorrow, but for now I'm not getting anything. Is this thing a transformer? I don't know. Let me know in the comments whether this thing is a transformer. From what I can tell, Kaohsiung is supposed to be like the wacky city because it's got wacky stuff like this. This thing is like particularly wacky. Look, it's even got like a guy on its penis, I think. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be a guy. I found another old train yard that's been turned into whatever the fuck this is. I just ran to the nearest 7-Eleven, bought a bunch of shit. Now I'm prepared. It is now October 1st, and from what I've seen online, the Typhoon has been upgraded to the equivalent of a Category 5. And so that's bad. That's very strong. Luckily, the worst of it isn't here yet, and it's just raining a little bit for now. And it seems to be that that's what it's going to do today. And life seems to be carrying on, at least for now. So I'm going to wander off a little bit, not too far from my Airbnb for obvious reasons, but at least explore a little bit of the outside while I still can. You know, from what I've seen of this city so far, I've really been enjoying it. I'm glad I get to see it before it gets fucking destroyed. So this isn't like the biggest problem at the moment, but I've got a few blisters on my foot, and I think I need to get new shoes, but I'm a size 13, and I have the biggest feet in the country, so that's kind of hard to do at the moment. Look at this Tetris tower that someone made for some reason. They could have made like a regular tower, but they were just showing off. Here is a harbor that is about 2 miles away from my Airbnb. And in about 24 hours, all of this is going to be underwater. I'm surprised by how inconsistent the rain has been. I figured that once a hurricane started, it just kept going. But no, it kind of goes on and off. Today's been feeling just truly bizarre because I figured at some point that I would have to run back to my Airbnb. But this has been like one of the least rainy days that I've experienced in Taiwan. I'm at the grocery store. Looks like a bunch of shit is selling out before the storm. It is now October 2nd, and it rained all night. It's continuing to rain now, but it's still not too bad. The typhoon seemed to have stalled out a little bit, so the worst of it is still yet to come. I think the eye is supposed to make landfall at midnight tonight. It keeps getting pushed back a little bit, but for now I'm heading out to McDonald's to get some breakfast. Some of the 7-Elevens are boarded up for this thing, but others aren't. It is now raining a bit harder, so I'm heading back to my place. As you can see, right outside of my Airbnb, there are storm drains, so I'm hoping that this helps to prevent any sort of actual flooding that might happen. I am presently hanging out right outside the 7-Eleven, and as you can see, there's barely any rain. The center of the storm is still quite a bit off, and I saw in the news that it's been downgraded to a Category 2, and we're not even going to get the worst of it. So really, this whole thing has been kind of underwhelming so far. The typhoon is finally here, and that tree over there recently fell down. Shit's getting pretty exciting. This is the room that I've been staying in for the past several days. And my original plan was to go up to Tainan today, but because today's the actual day that the center of the storm has arrived, it's not a good idea to do that. So I'm staying here for another night. Hopefully everything will be cleared out pretty soon and I can, then walk around town a little bit more. But for now, I'm waiting out the storm in this room. It's now the evening of October 3rd, and there's a whole bunch of damage around here. All these trees that I just saw up yesterday are now completely fucked. The worst of the typhoon is past. It's pretty much just a little rain at this point. So now I'm going around to both get some dinner and to check out what sort of damage that has happened. McDonald's is one of the few restaurants that apparently makes its workers work during a hurricane. So as a result, this is where everyone's coming to dinner. You can tell that this is the worst storm that this town has had in a while because of all the seemingly kind of old trees that have fallen down because of it. I'm now walking around town again on the morning after the storm, and there's still quite a few trees that are just lying around. People are obviously taking care of that, but I've also found all these buildings here with really interesting designs. I'm gonna check them out for a bit. Ironically, one thing I enjoyed about the storm was that it felt less humid. I think I'm just as wet as I was when I walked outside during the storm, but now it's just from my sweat. Looks like these guys seem to be doing all right after the storm. I wanted to check out the city park before I left town, but I had forgotten that city parks tend to have trees, so this place is a bit of an obstacle course. I'd feel awkward to record this sort of thing, but behind me there's an old lady all by herself singing at the top of her lungs. I just arrived in the city of Tainan, which is the city I wanted to get to yesterday until things got in the way. And fun fact about Tainan is it used to be the capital of Taiwan before that became Taipei instead. I'm only in this town for one day, actually less than a full day. So I'm trying to see as much as possible today before tomorrow I take the train over to, not Taipei, but the town that the airport is actually in. And then the following day I will fly out of here. Tainan is known as a particularly historical city, and I can definitely see it. I mean, this street in particular seems historical as fuck. As I'm walking around town, I noticed that there's really not as much damage from the typhoon here as there was in Kaohsiung, which is weird because the two towns are pretty close to each other, so that's kind of a surprise. During the 17th century, the Dutch East India Company colonized this part of the city, which is a district known as An Ping. And right now I am walking a few miles over to the old fort that they set up back in those days. I've made it to that one fort. It says that it's an old fort, but if I had to guess, these cats are new. You know, I bet this fort was pretty hard to get into back in the day, but for me it just cost $2. My flight back to the US is on Sunday morning, and for those long distance flights, I don't really like morning flights. So my big brain plan is to not get a lot of sleep over the next 2 nights. And that way I'll be really tired, and then I'll fall asleep on the flight. Well, my time in Taiwan is quickly coming to an end. Today is my last day here, and it still feels like I just got here, even though I've been here for 2 weeks already. When I was originally planning this trip, I was debating between doing 2 weeks in Taiwan and 1 week in Taiwan and 1 week in the Philippines. Needless to say, I am glad that I spent so much time in Taiwan. I'm sure the Philippines are nice. So I was reaching into my backpack to get some coins out when I accidentally sliced my finger on my razor. The razor's cover had apparently fallen off. So I ran over to 7-Eleven and luckily got it cleaned out there and bandaged up. But here's the little bastard that sliced up my finger. I've got to say, Taiwan has had some pretty good graffiti, but this city is like top notch. Shout out to Tainan. I guess I should mention that I was out last night, and when I was out, I saw a motorcycle lying in the middle of the road, and right next to it was a pool of blood. Now, there wasn't any body there. I think they had cleaned it up by the time I got there. But yeah, don't ever ride a motorcycle, ever. Apparently the parade is in town. Let's see what that's about. Well, it's already over, so I'll never have any idea why those people were doing that. I'm having fun exploring Tainan, but at some point I'm going to have to get back to the train station and go up north to the town of Taoyuan, which is the actual town where the airport is. I have arrived at Taoyuan, which I think that's how you pronounce it. That is Taipei's sister city and the one where the airport's at. And I'm only gonna like walk around here for like a couple hours before I head in for the night. But yeah, it seems pretty good. Like, first impression is that this is a good city. I wanted to walk around this town without my bags. I was looking for a luggage storage, but couldn't find any, not even in the train station. So fuck it, I'm just carrying them with me. I've been at this city park for about an hour now. It's a great place to people watch. I got basketball and even some skateboarding over there. So that's about it for my time in Taiwan. This has definitely been one of my favorite countries that I've ever visited. It's very nice, a lot of things to see here. I hope it doesn't get attacked by China. Bye.